Sir.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, I'm going to be exercising my conscience to vote against this bill and most, but not all of, the amendments. And I want to set out, in reference to part 1 of the bill, why that is. Sir, I've been a member of this House gladly for the best part of 20 years, and in that time I've seen a number of attempts fail to liberalise Easter Sunday trading. Every time a bill's come to this House, it has failed to muster a majority of the consciences of members of this House. And the government, dead set it seems on liberalising Easter Sunday trading, has come up with an alternative approach. Firstly, they whip their caucus, removing choice, as my colleague Mr O'Connor has noted, and they pass to local authorities, local government, the burden of making the change, sir, which they cannot muster a majority to make in this House. And frankly, if you're going to liberalise Easter trading, do so front on. Not you, sir, personally, but this House. Let's do it as a House. We are the policy makers. This House is sovereign. If it is the will of the members of this House to do it, let's do it. But in the last 20 years, it never has been, and the government knows that. And that's why we've got this, frankly, cockeyed approach to passing the buck to local authority. And why is that a problem? Well, sir, I'm a member of the Select Committee that heard the submissions. And as other colleagues have said, major metropolitan local authorities came in one after the other. Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, a number of provincial TAs came in and said, one after the other, we don't want this power. We do not want you to delegate this decision to us. It's best done as a parliamentary matter. Oh, and by the way, nor do we want to go through a bylaw process because that has cost, time and legal risk. And hearing those submissions, which were extensive and persuasive, officials went away, no doubt consulted with their minister, and rather than doing what the local authorities really wanted, which was Parliament to make a decision, they went away and they said, well, we will take away the bylaw protections and you can do it as a policy decision. Well, that brings us, sir, to the submissions from the Regulations Review Committee. Now, I want to clarify that I'm exercising my right to speak to my conscience today as an ordinary member of Parliament. I happen also to chair that committee. I'm not here speaking as the chair, but I will be trying to be faithful to its representations. Sir, the Committee on Legal Advice wrote to the Commerce Select Committee and said that it believed that this bill contained what's known in the jargon as a Henry VIII clause, that it believed the bill contained a Henry VIII clause. That is, the proposed regulatory instrument to overturn an Act of Parliament by sub-delegating through regulation to a local authority the ability to effectively override the previous will of Parliament is unconstitutional. Now, that unconstitutionality was, to be fair, contested by officials and went back to Regulations Review, and they stood by their initial advice, stood by the fact that this was a Henry VIII clause at its heart and therefore flawed. However, it was also noted that if you're going to do a Henry VIII clause, then one should follow the guidelines set out in standing orders, which is that they are done very rarely, in exceptional circumstances, with clear legislative provisions overseeing them, and with sufficient process protections to mitigate the constitutional outrage. And in this case, at least there were the bylaw-making processes, which, for example, propose a regular process on the record with full council decisions and extensive consultation and the right to appeal, and a Bill of Rights vet. And so, sir, very importantly, the Select Committee threw out, by failing to pass with a majority, the minister's proposed amendments that would have changed from a bylaw approach to a policy approach, precisely because they made the constitutional enigma worse. Parliament should make this decision if it wishes to, on the conscience of its members. It should not delegate that decision to a local government override. But if it is intent to do so, then it should provide the process protections set out in the bylaw-making process. Now, it wasn't, in my view, the finest hour of the government, when officials tried to tell the Select Committee... I'll come back to
sorry
this.
to interrupt the member. His time has actually expired. It's time to leave the chair for the dinner break, and I shall resume the chair at 7:30.